We're live.
Holy crap, just like that, we're live again. It's been a while. Been a while since we've been live. I was traveling a bunch. I went to Scotland, I went to Ireland, and I gained 25 pounds. So I've stayed off camera for a while. No, that's not the truth. I had a great time in Ireland and Scotland with my family. Went over there with my brother-in-law, two of my brother-in-laws, my sister-in-law, their children, my wife, and my kids as well. And just had an awesome time there. And thanks, shout out to Indiana Stones for taking me around, taking me and my wife around, took us to some castles and showed us some stone lifting and some things like that. And there's a video here of me not being able to budge this stone. In my defense, that stone was pretty dang heavy. He didn't know the exact weight of it, but he was like, it's like at least 120 kilos. So it's not chump change, but he makes it kind of look like chump change. And yeah, Dave is like, he's really proficient at this. I actually didn't know. I mean, looking back on it, it just looks dumb, but like I literally didn't know to use my legs. I most of the time when I see people picking up stones and picking up sandbags and stuff, they don't really dip their legs down the way that he did, kind of sumo-y. But even if I did that, I might have had a little bit better result, but I wouldn't have not been able to pick it up the way that he did here. The cool thing about Dave is he's only been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. I think he maybe said 4 years, and he's working on a documentary, so that should be really cool. Supposed to come out in like October. I don't know where they're going to be able to get it to, but hopefully they'll be able to get it somewhere good so people can learn more about stones because it's awesome. Anyway, we're live and we're here talking about eating as much as you want and getting ripped. And I want to talk to you guys today about carbs versus fats. And I want to like dive in on some of this. Like, I don't think there's any reason to really bash a lot of other diets. I think there's a lot of diets, there's a lot of protocols out there that you can follow that can be effective. One thing I do want to talk about today, though, is like, which diet can you do and eat the most amount of calories, the most amount of food? And I would say that in general, if we stick to natural foods, you're more than likely going to be able to eat more natural foods than you are the highly processed, ultra processed foods. I think that's just the way things go. I think the natural foods digest differently. They're just kind of designed for us, the proteins and the fats and stuff like that, they come together very often in nature. Carbohydrate type stuff in nature doesn't usually have fats with it. I think that's by design. I think there's like a lot of things when you think about just kind of like eating natural foods, the benefits are huge. And then from my own experience, when I eat natural foods, it helps promote me to eat more natural foods. If things start to infiltrate the diet and if I start to have even something like a protein bar, not so much anymore, but back in the day, that used to be a slippery slope for me because it would flip my taste buds. I call it flipping your taste buds inside out. And that's what it felt like it would do to me. And then it felt like it was easier for me to fall into the trap of eating more things that were like gray area or just not even part of the diet at all. Nowadays, if I'm to like cheat on my diet, I really don't like there's not an influence of like shitty food in my diet. However, some of the stuff, I was doing like during the sugar diet, during sugar fasting, having like candy here and there, having sorbet here and there, having those kinds of things. Those are things that are still in my diet here and there, but it's few and far between. I'm not eating a lot of that stuff. I got like Talente, like lemonade, something sorbet the other day. It was really good. I like the mango one as well. Those are all non-fat, and they're pretty much just fruit. But it is processed. It's got like other stuff in it. And I noticed that when I eat that, that doesn't digest as well as a lot of the other things that I eat, like rice and potatoes, chicken breast, white fish, tuna, scallops, shrimp, salmon, those types of things. But anyway, I think when you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, I think you can get away with eating a lot of food. When you're eating carbohydrates, I think you can get away. When your body's running off carbohydrates, I think you can get away with eating a lot of food, especially if it's in the absence of fat. I think that once you bring fat calories in, you might need to be a little bit more meticulous or a little bit more on point with either like tracking your calories or not eating any carbs at all. I think that it can be difficult. You could like not any carbs at all, I said, but like, let's just say 50 a day or something like that, because we know those sneaky little bastards kind of find their way into our diet almost no matter what we do. And if you guys have questions, you can pop up and ask some questions here and there, because we'll address some questions as we move forward. Once I kind of get done with my speech here, what I've noticed, I shot a video yesterday talking about how I've lost over 100 pounds doing a low carb diet. And that's true. And one thing that was interesting about my weight loss is that I lost weight over like a really long period of time. I wasn't in a rush. I do remember writing down like, oh, by October, I'd like to weigh this. I do remember doing a little bit of that, but it was never really a race. I did weigh myself often. And it was always like, look, man, in general, the scale should go down every month. It doesn't need to go down every day that you weigh yourself, or every other day, or every 3 days. But basically, it should go down kind of all the time. And what would happen was, I came down from 330. What would happen was, I would be like 300. And then I might scale down to like 290 for a bit. And then I might pop back up to 295. And then I might go back down to, the weight would fluctuate. I might get down, under 290 for a little bit, and then I might pop back up to 295 and so on. And what I did every about 20 pounds that I lost, every 10 pounds that I lost, the weight that was 20 pounds heavier than that, I said I would never weigh that again. So when I went from 280 to 270, I told myself I will never weigh 290 ever again. And I gave myself that cushion of 20 pounds because I know that happens. Like you gain and lose weight, and you lose track, and you lose sight of what you're doing. You're not always so targeted and tunnel vision on your goal. So it wasn't like I just snapped my fingers one day and just started losing weight like crazy. It took a long time. I think that when I start to think about a lot of the people that are still in my life, and some of the people that struggle with their weight, and people that I help, and people that I communicate with quite a bit, I think to myself, what style of diet would they want to be on? And what's easier to get in conversation? What's easier for me to communicate with someone that's not as into some of this stuff as I am? Some of my friends are way into this. And they have extra body fat that they want to get rid of. But I have other friends and other people in my life that they don't really care that much about training and everything else. And so you end up just thinking to yourself, well, if there's multiple ways, then that should be more helpful. Like if we do have an obesity crisis, if that's what we're calling it, seems like we do, right? There's a lot of people that are way heavier than they should be. So we have this obesity epidemic going on. Well, the best way to serve that would be to have as many resources as we can, and not necessarily as many diets as we can, but it would be nice to have options. Let's talk about some of those options for a second. You can count your calories. That's definitely an option. You can go and you can, get an app on your phone, and you can use your whatever the hell app it is that you want to use, and you can track your calories. A lot of these things are starting to help you track your calories just by taking a picture. And that technology is going to get better and better, and that's going to get easier and easier, to the point where it's going to get so easy where everyone's just going to use that. I mean, literally, probably like 80 or 90% of the people with a phone at some point will probably utilize that kind of technology if it does indeed come around. I know that it's somewhat there, but it's not there all the way. If it gets to be that simple, well, maybe not that many people, because some people just don't care, right? But I would say that a good percentage of people, especially people in fitness and especially people that are conscious of trying to maintain some sort of body weight that leads to healthier outcomes than just the standard American diet and so on. But we know that there's like these different options. We know that you can track your calories and so forth. And one thing, though, that I think is true is that when you have mixed macros, I think that for some people that lets the guard down too much. That lets the guardrails down too much. That lets the training wheels. It gets rid of your training wheels, kind of, and like it can make it feel like you're going to be off balance, because you're kind of, for some people, but you're opening up the floodgates to allow yourself to eat all kinds of different foods when you have access to mixed macros. But you see it all the time. You know, some of these guys are eating In-N-Out burger and they're having the bun and the fries and everything else, right? And then there's people that are like, you know, low carb, and they're going and getting an animal style, or they're getting a Flying Dutchman, or those types of strategies as well, to, you know, kind of cut back on calories and to stay on top of their low carb diet, or maybe even carnivore diet in some cases, where they're trying to mainly just eat meat or eat things that come from animals, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of do this stuff. But I think that when you have fat calories in there, I think what ends up happening is I think that your metabolic rate, I think that you can't get away with eating as much food. As an example, take someone that weighs about 200 pounds. Now, some of this is just smelly science. So, and this is just my theory, but someone that weighs 200 pounds, I think that someone that weighs 200 pounds could have maybe somewhere between 3,500 and 4,500 calories if they're eating high carb, decent amount of protein, and they're keeping that fat really low. Let's just throw a percentage on it. Just say 10%. They're keeping their fat percentage that they're consuming in a day, their dietary fats, they're keeping them like under 10. They're trying to eat things that are very lean. Okay. I think that person gets to eat in that range, 3,500 to 4,500 calories, as opposed to somebody that has mixed macros and is eating more fat and or is doing a low carb diet. I think that person only gets to 10x their body weight in calories. So they go from being allowed to have potentially 3,500 to 4,000 calories to having about 2,000 calories. And we could give them a little bit of a buffer and say, hey, somewhere between 2 and 3. But the latter sounds better to me. The higher carb, getting more fuel in, eating, having the ability to eat more, consume more energy. There's also something called energy flux. We know that when you give the body more energy, a lot of cool things happen, a lot of positive things happen, and you're going to tend to want to burn more calories. You're going to be enticed to burn more calories. You're going to maybe want to work out a little bit more, and not only maybe work out more, but when you work out, you're going to put some more oomph into it. Whereas sometimes, and look, everyone's a little different. I did these keto low carb diets for a really long time and didn't notice that I didn't feel like I was unmotivated to work out. However, it wasn't until I started to think about like intra-workout carbohydrates, and it wasn't until I started thinking about intra-workout hydration that those two things, or one or both of those things, really did feel like it made a big difference during training, like drinking a Gatorade or something like that, or having an intra-workout shake, which I haven't even messed with in a long time, which I should probably do that again just because I've always liked that. Now I have intra-workout drinks, but it's mainly just my hydration product in water, and I should probably get back to having some carbohydrate, during the workout. I was messing around with eating a little bit of candy and stuff like that too, but I don't think it's as effective as, I know that some of these things can maybe be gimmicky from the supplement brands and stuff, but I do think that there's something to the cyclic dextrins and some of these things. I think they have value, and they taste good enough just to do them, right? Just to eat, just to have them, consume them. Why not? It's a little extra boost, a little extra bump during your training session. And that's what we're all looking for, right? We're looking for good training sessions. And so I'm not going to state that your energy is going to be better when you're on the carb side versus the fat side. That's more for you to decide. You get to decide these things. You get to choose these things. You get to think to yourself, would I rather, be limited to just about 50 grams of carbohydrates a day and eat really as much as I want in terms of fat and protein? Or would I rather be on the other side of things and have to very meticulously pay attention to my fats? Those are two different ways of going about doing things. And again, I did mention you can also count calories. So it gives you another option in there. And then there's options, obviously, within all this stuff where you can even be like, just because you chose carbohydrates as an energy source doesn't mean that you have to have 800 grams of carbohydrates every day. And just because you chose fat as an energy source, same thing, doesn't mean you have to have 300 or 400 grams of fat every day. We did have Dominic D'Agostino on the podcast. And Dominic is one of the few guys I've ever talked to. And maybe Robert Sykes might be in this category too, but I don't even know. I don't even think so. Dominic was rare breed. He was like having like 300 grams of fat a day. And the dude is jacked. Like, he's in amazing shape. The guy's like incline bench pressing. I think last time I've seen him do some of that stuff, I want to say I've seen him do 365 for some reps, pulling 585, deadlift 585 for repetitions as well. But I mean, it's just, he's the only guy doing it. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of other guys doing it. And then when you start looking at some other guys doing it, they're usually not doing it as well. We do have other people. We do have Dr. Sean Baker. We do have Anthony Chafee. Like, we got some formidable people that look good, that are in good shape, that are strong. Dr. Sean Baker is, he's about 10 years older than me. He's 58, and he does a good job staying in shape. I think that Dominic D'Agostino, I think, is maybe right around my age or so. He looks young. He looks great. And he seems to be very healthy. I'm not sure about like blood work and all that kind of stuff, but I know that he's very sciencey about this stuff. He's a scientist. He's been studying keto for a really long time, and he knows there's not a person on the planet that knows more about ketones than Dominic D'Agostino. He's next level with everything he does. But again, he's kind of the only guy that I've ever seen, consuming like that. And he's on the other side of things. He's in great shape. Like, he's 10% body fat or lower. So sometimes when you have people that are already lean like that, consuming food like that, obviously they're going to probably handle those foods a little bit better than the average person. And same thing could be said for myself. But I thrived on both styles of diets. But with this style of dieting, there's some pros and some cons of being on the carb side. One major con, in my opinion, of being on the carb side, and this is my own experience, but maybe others have experienced this as well. I feel like I'm more tethered to my carbohydrates. I feel like it's important for me to eat 3, 5, 6 times a day, whereas when I'm doing protein and fats, it doesn't feel like I need to eat nearly as often. So that could be a big advantage for me personally. You know, I was building my businesses and raising my children all at the same time, and it was easier for me. And I've said this for many years. The war on carbs, a low carb diet, like the reason why I chose it for so long, and the reason why I did it for so long, and the reason why I'll probably go back to doing it again at some point. It definitely would have been a lot easier when I was traveling to still follow like a low carb protocol. And in some cases I did, because of how easy, like it's not hard to do. It can be hard, you know, with like bread, and like there's some cases like where there's, you know, maybe a little bit more carbohydrate coming in than you would like when you're trying to be low carb. But it's interesting. We have more options, and I think there's no reason to like leave some of these other protocols that have been effective. Like, let's define the word work, because people are like, oh, keto diets, you know, they don't work. People do them and they come off of them and then they gain all their weight back. Well, that would mean that it worked. If you lost weight, right? So you lost weight, correct? But and then how did you gain weight? Well, you gained weight by going back to your old strategy. So to me, that's not fair in saying that it didn't work. When you were following it, it worked. And there's not a diet plan that you can just look at on paper and then not follow and have it work. Like, it doesn't work that way. You have to actually do it. And once you discontinue doing it, you don't continually reap the rewards of whatever diet protocol it was you were following. I think one of the really interesting things that came with the sugar diet and with sugar fasting was this idea of like, hey, let's look at this from a different perspective. Let's look at this. Let's talk more about your calories out. Like, if we feed the body more, maybe the body will want to burn more. And I think that in previous years, we weren't really looking at diet that way. I would say that Stan Efferding has been communicating about this for a while, where he's been talking about specifically like, hey, he wanted people to have more calories. He wanted people to eat more. And one thing, though, with the vertical diet, which Stan will tell you, is that if you want to tweak the vertical diet to get lean, you have to bring the fat calories down. Now, Stan and many other people may argue back and forth about the percentages of where the fat should be. I think some people think like a 33 split is good for all the macros. 33% of all three, an isocaloric diet. That can work, but again, I think you're going to run into some issues of like, maybe that caloric amount leaves you hungry. And if that caloric amount leaves you hungry, then it's going to be a tough diet for you to follow. So I think that my point in bringing all this up is, which diet can you follow to have you be the least hungry? You know, which diet is going to assist you the most to be able to follow it for the longest period of time? Let's hypothetically like write out a scenario. Let's say that low fat, high carb, let's say that it works. Let's say it works 20% better than low carb. High carb works 20% better. If your adherence to it is like you can do it for 5 days and then you just are dying to do something differently, well, then that strategy probably isn't great for you, even though the diet, it could be proven by science, maybe. That is, I'm just, again, hypothetical, it's 20% more effective at burning fat, but you can't really follow it. If you can't follow it, then it's not the right one for you. So then you have to try to figure out, what can you follow? Imagine following something that you could do for multiple years. And that's where I got myself to, is like, I've been messing around with a ketogenic style diet since the mid 90s, since I was in high school. And then I power lifted for years and got big and wasn't really on a diet when I was doing that. I would eat, my macros were pretty good during the day. I would eat a lot of rice. I would eat a lot of potatoes. I would eat a lot of red meat. I'd eat a lot of chicken thighs. I would eat obviously more fat. There was fat and carbohydrates. It was a mixed macros bunch. And then in the evening is when I would eat my peanut butter cups, my ice cream, and all that other stuff. And I went through some bouts there where I tried to do it cleaner, and it didn't seem to work as well. There's multiple reasons for that probably, but I used to love to eat some bagels and stuff like that before bench pressing, and just certain things that's got to be kind of fun. And so there's a lot of elements to diet that go well above and beyond just like what you're eating. And sometimes when I've heard some other people talk about nutrition, I'm like, how do they end up with that? Like, how do they think that way? Like, I'm way hungrier than that. Sometimes people would just have like a simple little breakfast, just have like 2 eggs. And then I'm like, what? How the hell do you eat just 2 eggs? Like, that's going to make me ravenously hungry. If that's the point of it, then I get it. Maybe induce some hunger and get the metabolism kind of revving. But damn, like, that seems brutal. I would rather not eat at all than to just eat like 2 or 3 eggs. And I'm not a huge eater. Like, I'm not going to eat like 12 eggs. I'm going to have, I don't know, maybe 5 or something like that. Maybe 6, if I was to eat some eggs. So it doesn't matter if a diet is necessarily more effective or not. What matters is, can you follow it? And that's why I'm trying to give you guys options. I don't care about what style of diet that you follow. I really don't. I don't give a shit. I just have been, over the years, been explaining the styles of diet that I've been using and that I've been utilizing. And I get excited about it because it's been helpful to me. It's been like life altering to me in a lot of ways. Nutrition has been incredible. And I also just love learning about it. I love learning about, all these different aspects of nutrition. And we sometimes think that there's not any tricks and not any secrets. And sometimes we do think that there's some tricks and secrets. And it does seem like, to me, it seems like there are these like little nuanced things that happen within the body that seem to give us some cool benefits. Like ketones, like, for those of you that have researched it and looked into ketones and looked into ketogenic diets and have done ketogenic diets, there's something there. There's something there. There's something with a ketogenic diet. We got to give the ketogenic diet some credit. There's also some inconveniences of it. And that's the thing. It's like, which style of diet are you going to pick that has the least amount of inconveniences? Because for you personally, at the moment right now, if you're listening to this, you're probably somebody that's interested in losing weight and specifically losing body fat. How can you get yourself to a point where you can follow something consistently for a long period of time? Like, we're not just talking about a couple days or a couple of weeks. Even with some of the diets that pop up here and there, people are like, oh, those aren't long term. Well, it's okay if something's not long term, as long as it just bridges a gap to get you into another diet, because you always have to have some sort of protocol to, and maybe not everybody needs this, but almost everybody needs this. Almost everybody needs some sort of dietary intervention to keep their body weight at some reasonable amount, right? And so why not just have access to some different styles of diets? What I'll say right now for, I've been doing higher carb stuff for a while now. It does seem kind of awesome that I have this like metabolic freedom to just eat the hell out of carbohydrates. Like I never was into counting calories, and I more than likely never will be. Just always found it to be annoying, an annoying, nuanced thing. But when I was competing in bodybuilding, I did have a meal plan, which is similar to counting calories. That meal plan was probably about 3,500 calories. What was it? It was a low-fat diet. It was a low-fat, moderate, modest carbohydrates, because Hani Rambod was like, you don't really eat carbs, so I don't want to find out what happens if you start to eat a lot of carbs. So a high day for me back then was like 300 grams of carbs. But now more recently, I've been having 500, 600, 700, 800 grams of carbs on given days. And I do like the freedom of being able to eat more carbohydrate. I'm eating a lot of rice. I've been actually making rice in my rice cooker lately with bone broth. And that's a great hack for those of you that like bone broth, or those of you that want to get some of the amino acids, glycine, and also get some of the collagen benefits. You're not adding any fat. You're adding a little bit of protein, and you're adding some awesome flavor. And it just cooks up, and it's like, it's just very, very, very good. So I've been eating the hell out of that. And it's not like I'm just having like a little cup of rice. I'm having like a pretty big bowl of rice. And then whatever meat I'm adding to it, depending on whatever it is I'm following. Right now, I'm actually been doing a lot of sockeye salmon and pink salmon. Those have various amounts. There's a little bit more fat in the sockeye salmon than there is the pink salmon, but I'm doing that just to kind of experiment with some omega-3s and kind of see what that will do. And I'm having that mainly in the evening. So I'm still doing the, kind of FGF21 protocol. I'm still riding some of this out. I'm still experimenting. I'm still toying around with some of the original aspects of the sugar diet. And most days I'm having about 100 grams of protein. Carbohydrates, they could be, somewhere between 500 and 750 or something like that. They probably don't really get higher than that. I doubt it. And the fat grams are just, whatever's in some of that salmon, and any trace fats that might come from fruit, trace fats that might come from like rice or potatoes or something like that. The diet is extremely healthy. A lot of fruit. Vegetables have been added in there. I'm trying to eat a lot of garlic and onions and peppers and just really like fermented stuff. I have, kimchi. I have fermented. I have like pickles and all kinds of stuff that I'm really just trying to make sure I'm kind of covering all my bases, I guess, in terms of my nutrition. And then on the weekends, I'm eating more protein. On the weekends, I'm having a little bit more. And Ryan's playing a video of like some of the stuff that I grabbed when I was in Ireland. There's always options, man. People travel and they're like, it's like, it just kind of depends on how you're traveling. But nowadays, most people, instead of just staying in a hotel, they stay at like an Airbnb or something like that. And it's just, I cooked up a bunch of pasta and I bought a bunch of canned fish. It was so easy, and that's not what I ate the whole time I was there. That would be ridiculous. I participated. I ate everything else everybody else ate. Just during the day and stuff like that, I had these other meals that were still really healthy. They seemed delicious to me. And that's a diet strategy that can stay with you forever, that you can carry with you no matter where you go. Because most places, like even when you travel to European countries, they still have yogurt, and you can get like pretty much zero fat yogurt. It's predominantly just protein. And then everywhere in the world pretty much has fruit. So, you could still stay on plan. You could still stay on point. Maybe it's not going to be exact. Maybe it's not going to be precise. But I came back from this trip about 4 or 5 pounds less. And in the past, when I was a young man, I'd come back from most of my trips just weighing a lot more. So I had to use different strategies on different days too, because I didn't know what the night was going to bring me. I didn't know what we were going to eat or where we are going to eat necessarily in the evening time. And so I ate less during the day. I ate less carbohydrates during the day. And this is kind of the last point I'll finish with. As I was doing a low carb diet for many years, the low carb diet turned into, it was low carb, high protein, high fat. And that's why I try not to use the word keto too much, because it wasn't really a ketogenic diet. But over time, what it became was a low carb, modest amounts of fat. And I would say like protein was probably like, 1 gram per pound or over, 200 to 250 grams of protein every day. Maybe 300 grams of protein every day. The fat calories, though, over the years dropped dramatically as I learned more and as I started to understand things a little bit better with nutrition. I was like, you know what? My fat calories don't need to be that high. And I wasn't a big oil person. I wasn't like, dumping a ton of MCT oil in my coffee. And like, I never got like crazy into that whole thing. But when I was choosing some of my foods, I'd have like ribeyes and 85-15, hamburger meat and stuff like that. And I don't do that anymore at all. Now, even if I was to go back on a very and again, I will go back to this diet. Like I love eating protein and fat. I love that combination. But if I do go back to that, or when I do go back to that, I will not be consuming crazy amounts of fat. It will just be like once a day, maybe I'll have some chicken thighs, or once a day, maybe I'll have some chicken wings, or once a day I'll have like a ribeye. But in the past, it was more like I would do that like 2 or 3 times a day, on top of having like an omelet, and the omelet would have bacon and cheese and so forth. And I'd have, 3-4 meals that had 50-60 grams of fat in them. And that part of my dieting career, that part's over with. I won't ever do that again, because I don't think there's a need for me to do that ever again. It was fun. I was kind of fun in some ways to do that. And I'm not saying that I'll never have a meal again that doesn't have 50 or 60 grams of fat in it. I certainly will. And even probably during this, during this dieting that I've been doing the last few months, I've certainly had meals that had 50 or 60 grams of fat in them at one shot. When we were in Ireland, we got some lamb that my sister-in-law cooked up. And it was just ridiculous how good it was. But it was just like all fat. Like I took a bite and I kind of knew, like I knew there was like no protein in this like one part that I took a bite out of. And it was worth it. It was freaking unbelievable. It was so good. So I know that some people are like, oh, well, you need the fat, when you're not eating the carbohydrates. And that's true. But how much fat do you need? How many calories from fat do you need? I don't really think there's a person that can really make a case where they would need, like, I know it's energy dependent on like how much someone moves around and their body type and things like that. But I would say like, 200 grams, that's a lot. That's a lot of fat. I can't think of a reason on why someone would need more than 200 grams. And I can say that for all the macros, really. I don't really know. I can't think of a lot of great reasons on why someone would need more than 200 grams of protein, even if they're 250 pounds, even if they're 275. I don't know if they need it necessarily. Maybe to be a little more optimal, maybe they need to bring it up a bit because they're like a little bigger than that. But it's rare for most people to have, 200 pounds of lean tissue on their body. There's some, and for those, maybe you could say, okay, they need 250 or 225. And then the same thing with carbs, like 200 grams of carbs is the only one where you could say, okay, well, I think someone would need to bump that up a little bit, especially if they didn't have their fats in there. But ultimately, my low carb diet started to also become lower in fat, because it's my belief if someone wants to be completely shredded, you end up sacrificing multiple macronutrients. And it's usually going to be 2 macronutrients. And most of the time, it's going to be fat that's going to get pulled way, way down. And the carbohydrates, in some cases, will get pulled down a little bit too. In the case of like a bodybuilder. I saw a clip recently from Alberto Nunees, and he had a really great, he's the best. Alberto Nunees is the best, but he had a picture. Maybe you can check out his Instagram, Ryan. He had a picture, and it was of a guy that he had sort of eating into a show. It's the picture all the way to the right. So he had this guy eat into a show. Now this is high level bodybuilding. So, not everyone gives an F about high level bodybuilding, right? But and Alberto Nunees is a drug free bodybuilder, competes in drug tested federations, and then I believe maybe not all of his athletes, but I think almost all of his athletes are drug free. The guy that he's pointing out here weighs about the same weight in both of these pictures, but he is leaner in the second picture by kind of a long shot. What Alberto Nunees does with people is he has them ready for a show like about a month in advance, a month to 6 weeks in advance, and they will be peeled, they will be shredded, they will just look insane. And then from there, he brings their caloric intake, and obviously, coaches like Alberto Nunees, they kind of have no choice but to count calories, especially when they're coaching somebody, because you have to be, it's just the way it is. Hey, you got to be precise, and they need to know exactly what the person is doing. But you can see in this picture that the guy's a lot leaner. And what Alberto's explaining in the video is like, there's all these kind of shifts that happen within the body, and someone will look more muscular, they'll hold more muscle mass, they'll have less inflammation. And I'm not exactly sure why all those things happen, but a big guess for me would be, if you have a bodybuilding show that you're doing and you're prepping for, let's say, like 20 weeks, he does long preps, and they're usually even sometimes longer than 20 weeks. But let's just say that you do a prep for 20 weeks, and you start to notice, oh shit, the show's getting closer, and the show's about a month out. And you start to think about your competition. Maybe you poke around, and maybe you know who your competition is, and maybe you check out their channel or page or whatever, right? Well, you start looking at these guys, you're like, these guys are all going to get smoked. Like, I'm way ahead. Like, being ahead makes you feel great. And so, in my opinion, what's probably happening is like, you just sleep better at night because you're ahead. You already did your work. And I bet you that you probably sleep a little bit better each night. And I bet you that your mood and just everything is different. When you feel behind in life, that's the most stressed out that you can have your body, is when you feel like you're behind on your money, you're behind on your taxes, you're behind on your mortgage, you're behind on your rent, you're behind on, you woke up late, you didn't get to do a quick meal prep to have lunch, at work, and you're trying to be on a diet. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that's super stressful. And that stress, it does make a big difference with how your body looks. How we feel is a huge part of how we look. It's massively connected. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because Alberto Nunees rocks, and he's my homie. But if we have some questions, we can start throwing around some questions. Maybe I got a couple answers for you.
Okay, we have one question from Hugo Berry says, "Hi, Mark. I have been eating a lot of fruit during the daytime and starches/lean meats at night. Have you dealt with needing to go number 2 in the bathroom a lot with eating fruits throughout the day?" And then there's a second part, and he says, "Also, your modified sugar diet has helped me so much more than carnivore, paleo, vegan, etc. Thank you for being open to new diet possibilities. This has helped me seriously a ton."
Sweet. Yeah, I know a lot of people are still doing the Smelly protocol, which is great. Yeah, you're going to go like I've said this many times, like whenever you change your diet, there's always going to be some shifts in your bowels, in your bowel movements. You're probably going to go to the bathroom either more or less, and in some cases, like when someone does like a bodybuilding show, they like really aren't going to the bathroom hardly at all. Those guys just get so lean and they're like retaining and holding on to just about everything that they end up being constipated. But again, it's because of the change in diet. Like the diet gets to be taken to like an extreme. So I would, if it was me in the position of like, if I felt bloating or if I feel gas, when I feel bloating or gas from my diet, that's a big deal for me. That's a huge red flag. I do not like that. That's something that I would do when I was like 16, 17 years old. And I would drink the protein shake and not really think about it and just be all farty and gross. As I've gotten older, I was like, no, that's not the way, I just started to learn more. Like we should be assimilating these things. We should be digesting these things well. And, just so you're going to have to, if you are interested in trying to figure out like what the culprit is, you really have to probably start to single out your fruit. So, eat a banana, wait 20 minutes, see how you feel. Going to the bathroom a little bit more isn't a huge deal. That would not be a red flag for me if I was going to the bathroom like 4 times instead of 2. I wouldn't really care that much. But if it's like diarrhea or if you have like gas and just that is a huge red flag. I don't know what's happened to me, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten more sensitive to like energy drinks and stuff. And there's like certain sweeteners and things like that. I just cannot go near them. I don't know. It's crazy because my stomach used to be. I used to be able to eat anything. I could eat like out of a garbage can, like a raccoon or something like that, and not have anything bother me. I could mix all kinds of weird stuff together and not have any problems. Every once in a while, milk can get me, so I don't really mess with milk. I don't mess with that much dairy stuff. I guess I do have cottage cheese here and there. I do have yogurt, but for some reason those don't really mess me up. And what's even more strange is that like a lot of these yogurts and stuff, these zero fat yogurts, they're not really necessarily good for you. Like these are kind of like these are ultra processed. They have a lot of stuff in them that's not great for us. They have things that they have chemicals in them that give you particular mouth feel. They have a bunch of different weird sweeteners and stuff in them. And for some reason, I can eat those and not have any issues. I do think the lactose is removed. But yeah, our yogurts are weird, man. It is a really weird, it's a weird product because you're thinking, man, this is like so healthy. You're thinking it's kind of the ultimate in health. But it's a rabbit hole. Like if you start to really look into it, there's some people that go as far to make their own yogurt, which is pretty cool. And you can go to some of these hippy dippy stores and you can get the full fat yogurt, and those will be safer bets in terms of like, in terms of overall health, not in terms of like being shredded, which is usually what I'm trying to talk about is like being lean and helping people lean out. So yeah, if you're getting like bloating and that kind of stuff, you want to kind of stay away from that. I do want to address a couple other things here too, is that I notice that, there's some big differences between, or people think there's big differences between somebody like just wanting to lose some weight and somebody wanting to get shredded. And they really aren't that different. It kind of reminds me of when people talk about the differences in training of men and women. Like there's some differences in training for a male versus a female for many obvious reasons. Maybe females want to stick to particular exercise a little bit more because they have different goals. Like a guy is going to want to build his chest, and a girl's probably not going to want to, like, spend a ton of time on like incline bench. Maybe they do. I don't know, but they're not. They're more than likely going to do other exercises to accentuate other things. So there's some differences there. But when we think about what it takes to be lean, it's going to be very similar for everybody. There's many ways to get there. You can go low carb, you can go low fat. You can count your calories, but again, the thing that I like to communicate about calories is that when you count your calories, you're just going to have to continually like lower them. So you need some sort of plan. And that's where, some of these bodybuilding coaches and stuff, they get a lot of negativity, but there's a lot of good ones out there too. There's a lot of good coaches out there. There's a lot of people that can coach you. So it's awesome that we have the amount of options that we have. And it is unfortunate that we have some people that maybe aren't as good. But we should be grateful that we have access to some people that can really help us and assist us. But the difference between someone who weighs 400 pounds trying to weigh 300 pounds and the difference between somebody weighing 200 pounds trying to weigh 180, there's some crossover there in terms of the nutritional protocol that can be the same. Now, if it's someone that's 200 pounds and they're already in great shape, trying to get to 180 to be in better shape, versus the other guy who's obese and overweight and hasn't maybe messed around with nutritional protocols before, well, now there's like a little bit more difference there, because the obese person who hasn't maybe committed yet all the way to like really start to lose substantial amounts of weight, their strategy can probably be pretty calm for them to knock off 30, 40 pounds. Their strategy probably doesn't need to be like, we don't need to break out the big guns for that person necessarily. But if we did, it wouldn't hurt anything. Like if we put that 400-pound person on a bodybuilding diet and said, hey, have, 400 grams of carbs a day, have about 30 grams of fat, and have about 250 to 300 grams of protein a day, and lift 4 days a week and do cardio on the other 3 days, a person's going to have some really awesome results, and it's going to happen fast. But they don't need to necessarily like flip the switch. And that's why I've been trying to share my story a little bit more with you guys, because my story, what's in my story more so than anything, is just consistency. It's not a diet necessarily. It's just consistency. What I was able to be the most consistent with was a low carb diet. That's what I was able to follow the easiest, all the way to the point where like I could wake up tomorrow and just start doing that diet again and pick up right where I left off, because like I did it for so long. Now sometimes with this diet, I'm like, I'm kind of supposed to eat this at this time, not supposed to eat that at this other time. And it's a little bit more to juggle sometimes. When I'm doing a bodybuilding style diet, it feels the same way too, because like, again, it's just a little extra work to make sure you're not eating the fat, in my opinion, as opposed to just, cruising and just eating a lot of protein and fat. Something else that needs to be mentioned too is that protein, it's helpful to have fat with protein. It helps it to assimilate a little bit better. You digest it, you break it down a little bit better with some fats in there. So some of this idea of like, trying to eat 5% fat and some of these things, they're decent protocols for just a period of time. But hopefully in the single digit body fat series, and hopefully in my communication, I have communicated with you guys enough that you know that very, very low amounts of fat for too long of a period of time. I can't really tell you exactly how long a period of time, but for too long a period of time probably just is not a good idea, and probably won't really get you exactly where you want to be or exactly where you want to go. And on top of that, it might be overkill. You might not need to do that, that's interesting, right? What do I need to do to get the results I'm looking for? So I am a big proponent of the low fat diet. I do think it has a lot of merit. I think it's extremely helpful. And I think it's going to help a lot of people to lose weight, get in better shape. It's going to help people keep some fullness in their muscles, having the carbohydrates. But I'm not saying you need to go out of your way for fats, but I think maybe every couple days you eat a little bit more fat, or you just keep a little bit more fat in your nutritional protocol on a day-to-day basis. And how much is that? Like how much fat are we talking about? Well, I think a little fat goes a long way. And if you have about 4 grams of fat 5 times a day, I think something like that is like, that's not a bad start. You might need a little bit more than that because we're only talking about like 20 grams of fat. You might need to get closer to like 30. And on some days, it might be a good idea to have more like 40 or 50 grams of fat. We want to make sure that we want to pull and push on these different levers, but we want to make sure we don't do it for too long. We want to make sure that our luck doesn't run out. And it's easier to just tell people don't eat fat. It's easier just to tell people don't eat carbs. Like it's an easier message to say that. But in reality, it would be better if the people that did low carb next to no carb ate some carbs. And it would be better if the people that do low fat or next to no fat eat some fat. But sometimes it's hard to say that because when we say that, sometimes if I tell someone, hey, have 30 to 50 grams of fat, they have 60 to 70 grams of fat. And so that sometimes makes coaching or communication makes it difficult. But what I'd like to see people be able to do is I'd like to see people to be able to find a diet that they enjoy, get the results from it. And if they get bored or they're not getting the results they want anymore, they now have the knowledge to utilize another diet strategy, follow that diet for however long they want, get results from it. And when their luck runs out with that particular diet, they either switch back to the one they did previously or they start thinking about something slightly different. To me, that's the way it works. And people like seem to be confused. Like, why are you hopping around these different diets? Well, I've said this many times, but everyone does different diets. You can't really name a person that's just like perpetually on the same diet forever. Now, their diet might not have a particular name, or it might be under the umbrella of one particular thing. But a balanced bodybuilding-ish style diet ends up being a very, very low-fat diet. Bodybuilding diets they're all about the same. You're talking about lean meat and vegetables and some rice. That's usually like what you're talking about. It's usually like kind of what it boils down to. And then you obviously have like the Jay Cutlers and you got like some different things where those guys were just like eating, all day, 6, 7, 8 meals a day. Jay was doing, I think, 1,000 carbs and 10,000 calories a day. And it was just getting to be pretty crazy there for a little while with how much food he was consuming. But I just want people to understand there's multiple options. You might think that I'm a fence-sitting vagina man. You might think that I'm, trying to like toggle back and forth between the two to like be relevant or to get people to listen to me. I actually would go the complete opposite route that I'm going now. if that was what I was after. I would say, look, man, you have to do it this way. It's my way or the highway. This is the only way to do it. But again, if we start to try to figure out what's our definition of something working, well, I lost over 100 pounds from doing a low carb diet. And I kept the weight off doing a low carb diet. Like the weight, like this was like 17, like this all started like 17 or 18 years ago. This kind of whole thing started basically when I moved to California, whatever year that was. Yeah, 20 years ago, because my son was like 1 when we moved here from Ohio. So yeah, this has been like a 20-year thing. And you guys will go through you guys will probably go through a similar transformation. I mean, if you were to think about it logically, okay, I used like a high fat, high protein diet for many years to get myself to be lean enough to where when I switched over and wanted to eat more carbohydrate, it was easier for my body to handle those carbohydrates. Now, I could have went about that differently because I could have made myself more insulin sensitive if I just titrated some carbs in there more, something like that. I could have maybe done some things to stimulate the metabolism along the way, but those are things that I just wasn't aware of at the time. And so now I am where I'm at. But I also, switching over to carbohydrate, I didn't have to do anything real drastic, or I didn't have to like take my time switching from one energy source to another, probably because I did eat some carbohydrates. Like, as you guys remember, I was doing meat and fruit for a long time. Probably like 3 years ago is when I was making 3 or 4 years ago is when I was making like these giant fruit bowls all the time with yogurt and protein powder and stuff like that. And I mean, these would be like monumental. I'd have these at night. They would just be like, they got bigger and bigger. My bowl just kept getting bigger and bigger. I don't know what was drawing me to like want to do that or eat that, but I just remember it tasted damn good, and it helped me go to sleep. Maybe I need to bring that back. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.